what happened with the 49ers the last two games that you saw to try and explain how I guess they can either win or potentially not? What do we take away essentially from the two games?
Well, I think you can take away two things. I think you can take away that in the playoffs they haven't played their best ball yet, which could be good and bad, right? So obviously there's still room to grow. They can still play better. They showed it pretty much the entire regular season, give or take a couple games, that when they're at their best, they're a tough beat, right? They're as good a roster, as good a coaching staff, philosophy, and structure as there is in the NFL. They weren't at their best, but having said all of that, the NFL, you're very rarely going to always have your A game. You're very rarely always going to be at your best and have everything go your way. They found themselves trailing both the divisional and championship round. Yeah. Credit to Brock Purdy, that offense, the defense got stops that they needed to in the second half against Detroit. And when it mattered the most, something they have not done well under Kyle Shanahan, which is play from behind, come back and win games when trailing in the fourth quarter, they're able to do it twice in a row. That bodes well because I don't anticipate either one of these teams going too far ahead of the other. This is going to come down to the end most likely, and the teams that handle those pressure moments, those special situations, manage the clock, manage timeouts, and play the best situational ball, they're the teams that win these close games.
Well, I mean, it's kind of tough then to not think the Chiefs are going to win this because they've been through the most of these wars, right? They're now taking a different path to the Super Bowl than one that they've already won taking, right? And then this is a tougher, one would say, crucible to knock off the 2 and then the 1 seeds in those seeds' houses in back-to-back weeks.
Yep.
You know, so it's tough to think that they're not going to be the ones playing the best situational football when the game's on the line.
Yeah, and listen, that's a credit to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Andy's been doing this forever, and of course the two of them have been doing it together now for a long time. I think what's unique, though, about this Kansas City journey is, yes, Mahomes and Kelsey and Andy Reid, they're always going to be the headline of the story. This is a defensive story. This is Steve Spagnuolo and this young defense that was supposed to be a transition year last year, starting 3 or 4 rookies on that Super Bowl winning team last season. And because of Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey and Andy Reid, the offense kind of carried them and allowed them to weather some of those young, early NFL, kind of trials and tribulations that young players go through. And now it's completely flipped. Years ago, if you would have said that Patrick Mahomes was going to score 17 points in a playoff game, you'd have said their season be over.
Toast.
They win it. They beat Baltimore, scoring 17 points. This is a defensive-led team with the best quarterback in the league, and they knew they had to make that investment on the young side because of how much cap that Mahomes takes up, and he knows he has to make up for some of these new receivers and get Rashee Rice up to speed. Of course, he's always got Kelsey, but there's a lot on Mahomes' shoulders, rightfully so, but this defense, they're the story for Kansas City going in.
So then knowing the 49ers offense the way you do and having seen it the last 2 games in person, how equipped is Kansas City to do it for a 4th straight game against San Francisco in a playoff?
Yeah, and I think that's the question. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Shanahan comes out of the gates. We thought last week against Detroit, or 2 weeks ago against Detroit now, in the NFC Championship game, we said early on in the call, the approach for San Francisco was, this Detroit team is fantastic against the run. They pride themselves on stopping, but they are very susceptible against the pass, right? This needed to be a pass-heavy approach, and they didn't really do that early on, and then their big comeback was really spurred through the passing game. I think this week against Kansas City, if you find yourself in a trail, you find yourself playing from behind, you find yourself in a million third and longs, with this pressure package and the ability of Steve Spagnuolo to build the blitzes and the corners off the edge and L'Jarius Sneed and the ability to use multiple personnel groupings to throw off your rules and your assignments, it gets challenging. So I think early on, it's a heavy dose of McCaffrey, it's a heavy dose of Brock Purdy under center, hard play action pass on early downs, use the complement of the run game. I don't think this is a race to 30 points like it would be in past years against Mahomes, where you'd say, okay, we can't sit here and sit on the ball because Mahomes is going to have 30. I think this is a low 20s, maybe mid 20s type game. Very different than last year's Super Bowl where both teams were north of 30.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.